Hi, welcome to our premiere episode of Kenny's Kantina, Eating in Style on the Road. This is going to be a show of the RV life and cooking and eating well when you're traveling. So I want to welcome you all here. Right now I'm sitting in a campground in Hermosa, South Dakota. I've been visiting the Black Hills and enjoying the surroundings. If you haven't been here, you definitely need to put it on your to-do list. So today I'm going to be making my 2-minute salsa. I figure since the first episode, we're starting with an appetizer that you can put together in 2 minutes. Somebody says, hey, you want to come over to the house for dinner? And this is something that you can keep the ingredients in your pantry and be up and ready to go in just a matter of minutes. The recipe is actually on the website. You can follow along. First off, I'm going to run through the ingredients of what you need. I'm going to start with a can of diced tomatoes. I like the fire roasted tomatoes. It gives the salsa or a little more pronounced flavor, but you're welcome to use, if you don't have the fire roasted, you can use regular diced tomatoes as well. So we're going to use some salt, some pepper, some minced garlic, some oregano, cumin. Comino in Spanish is a spice that's used a lot in Tex-Mex dishes. You'll find as we go through other episodes when I'm preparing different Tex-Mex dishes, we'll be using comino a lot. The next ingredient is jalapeno slices. I buy the nacho slices. When you're buying that, check to see some jars are hot, some jars are medium, some are mild. The one I found this time is hot. So I'm going to probably use a little less fewer jalapeno slicers than I would if the jar is a mild version. And we'll get more into that when I add in jalapenos later. The other ingredient is cilantro. Now, some people like cilantro, some people don't. I like the enhanced flavor that comes with the cilantro. If you're not familiar or haven't used a lot of it, then you're going to start out with just add a little bit in. Now, the one thing you can do with the cilantro is, today I have fresh cilantro that I'm working with that I'll chop up here in a second. But you can also, I keep in my refrigerator a cilantro paste, and I also keep dried cilantro in my pantry. I always have a couple different options to get that cilantro taste in whatever I'm cooking. So those are the ingredients. They're not a lot, they're not complicated, and they're all items that you typically can have easily available in your pantry and refrigerator. So the first step I'm going to do is open up the can of diced tomatoes, and I'm going to stick that in a blender. Now, if you don't have a blender, if you're off-grid boondocking, something like that, you can always prepare this without blending it. You're just going to end up with a chunkier salsa. You're going to have the same flavor, but it's not going to be as finely chopped up. But it'll work if you don't have a blender. So I'm going to put that in the blender first, and then I'm going to add to that a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to add a teaspoon of black pepper. And then for the cumin, I'm going to put 2 teaspoons of cumin in that. For me, I buy cumin in big quantities, the big jars, because I use it in a lot of dishes. I use it in chili. I use it in Mexican rice. I use it in a couple other Mexican dishes, fideo and carne guisada, which will all be future episodes. We'll work through those different dishes. And then I'm going to give a teaspoon of oregano. And then I'm going to take a tablespoon of minced garlic. Now, you can use fresh garlic. It's just with traveling, to me, it becomes kind of a pain to constantly be mincing garlic and mashing garlic. So I buy the pre-minced garlic. It just speeds up my cooking process. So let me put a tablespoon of minced garlic in there. And then now what I want to do, chop up the cilantro. And I'm going to add about a tablespoon of cilantro. And I'm going to chop that up some. You can put it in, if you're using a blender, you can put that in without chopping it. And the blender will mix it up. You definitely want to chop it up if you're making it without using a blender. So I've got a tablespoon or so of chopped cilantro. So I'm going to stick that in the blender. The last item is a jalapeno slice. Thing about adding jalapenos to a salsa or any dish, you can always add more, but you can't take it out. So I'm going to make this batch fairly mild. So I'm only going to put in, let me open up the jar, 3 slices to start. I'm all about flavor, not necessarily about the heat. If you travel to New Mexico, they tend to be a lot about the heat. If you're in New Mexico and you're in a restaurant, Mexican restaurant, and they put salsa down in front of you, always try a little bit first, or you can be quite surprised. So I'm going to put 3 slices, fit into the blender. And like I said, I'm not going for heat here. I'm just going for the flavor. And like I said earlier, the jar of nacho slices, jalapenos that I have are hot. So I'm going to tone that down. If they were mild, I'd put double that in. And it's also good to ask your guests how spicy they like their food. I do a lot of entertaining in my RV. I like to meet people, have them over for dinner. The 2 questions when I'm preparing Mexican food are always, do you like cilantro? And how spicy a food do you like? How much heat do you like? So 2 things to keep in mind, because I want my guests to enjoy the food and not be sweating the whole time as they're eating it. So let me put my lid on my blender. All right. And turn that on. And this just takes a second to do. So I'm just going to hit the pulse once and then twice. And now it's mixed, chopped, and it's done. So let me just open up the blender, set that down, take it off, and I'm going to pour in a serving dish along with some chips. And the aroma, if you smell this as you're pouring it or before you pour it in the blender, you're going to smell that garlic, you're going to smell the cumin, and you're going to smell the cilantro coupled with the tomatoes. It's a wonderful smell. It just kind of makes you salivate. So I've got that in my dish. I have tortilla chips beside it. Let me get one. It's fresh. It's bursting with flavors, which I like. I like a complexity to it. And this is so much better than in a jar sauce. And like I say, it's a 2-minute salsa. And your guests and you will be loving it. So when I make this up, I'll put it in a Tupperware or a jar and keep it in the refrigerator. It's good for at least a week. It usually doesn't last that long in my refrigerator. I use it not only to just dip chips in it, but if I make breakfast tacos, I put it on it. If I make a Mexican dish, tacos or any other Mexican dish or Mexican rice or refried beans, it's nice to put a spoonful of that flavor on top of those dishes. So as we move forward in this, as I do other dishes, I will point out at different times, go back to episode 1 and listen and make some salsa to go along with your dish. I'm on my way towards Seattle, so I'll be on the West Coast. So I'll start doing some fish dishes out there, salmon on the grill, maybe some crab. I like to eat, and I like to eat in style, whether I'm on the road or not. And I live full-time in my RV, so I may be sitting for several months in a place, but I'm still doing out of the RV kitchen. I hope you have found this helpful. Let me know. Send me an email. There's a link on the website to send me an email to let me know how your salsa came out and how your family and guests enjoyed your salsa. Join me again for future episodes to learn some other great ways to eat in style on the road. So I'm Kenny from Kenny's Kantina, and I want to thank you for listening. And I also want to thank my sponsors, Roadhog Media and IBC Productions, on helping me get started with this podcast and moving it forward. So thanks again for joining us. Let me hear from you, and stay tuned for other recipes from the road as we eat in style. And have a good day.